93 WIBC, WIBC.com. This is one of the funniest guys out there, I think, and I'm not just buttering him up. I really do believe that. And if you've seen his latest book, well, you know that already, but you need to check it out if you haven't. Dad is Fat is the latest offering from Jim Gaffigan. Why Dad is Fat? It's because he got 5 kids. Well, let's find out. We'll talk to Jim. He's going to be in town, actually, for a book signing next Thursday in Carmel up at the Barnes & Noble. Mr. Gaffigan, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Now, if you don't know, if the listener doesn't know, Jim is a native Hoosier from Chesterton, Indiana. Question about that very quickly, because I've been here just shy of 2 years now, and I was told that right after I move here, once I establish residency, that makes me a Hoosier. I'm not sure if that's true. Now, you live in New York now, so how much Hoosierness do you have left since you were from Indiana and live somewhere else now?
Well, I'm a very white bread looking guy.
Yeah.
And growing up in Indiana, I think that, I've still retained a lot of, I guess, my Hoosierness. I don't know. I'm from a small town, so I guess you could say I'm maybe more Midwestern than anything. But, I loved Indiana. It's the great irony is I realized how truly, Hoosier I am when I got to New York, because New York's a very kind of ethnocentric place where everyone's like, what are you, a Jewish or Italian? And I was like, I'm from Indiana. And they're like, all right, you're an Indiana guy. So,
is there a difference in Hoosierness if you're from a small town as opposed to a place like Indianapolis?
Well, I think, I'm from northwest Indiana.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of on the edge of it. I mean, there were definitely, farmers in the area, but my town has changed a lot since I left. But northwest Indiana the Calumet region is very different from the rest of Indiana. Like
sure.
Indiana, I joke around about it, where the rest of Indiana is kind of like, it's like the crazy cousin that you have to deal with. You're like, yeah, I guess he's a relative. So, because northwest Indiana is right next to Chicago, so there's they're more Bears fans than Colts fans.
That is true. The book is called Dad is Fat. You got 5 kids now. You've the entire family crammed into what sounds like a rather tiny apartment. I love the diagrams, by the way, because I missed this the first time I spoke to you. But on in the book, you've diagrammed the apartment and how this tight-knit family survives in the apartment. In essence, it's because all the kids end up in bed with you and your wife, correct?
Yes, that is true. I mean, and I should say, just to clarify,
sure,
this is not some kind of, we're not presenting a challenge like, I'm going to raise 5 kids in a 2-bedroom with my wife. I mean, that's not the goal. It's a result of the fact that we have, my wife's been pregnant, every year for the past 8 years. So we have been it's kind of hard to turn to a woman who's 7 months pregnant and say, let's pack up and move. They don't necessarily want to do that. But we've been looking for an apartment, I would say, for about 3 years.
Yeah, in New York City, I imagine that's hard to find.
Yeah, it's expensive, but it's also, with 5 children, I mean, we don't have an expectation to find a 6-bedroom apartment in New York City, or be able to afford a 6-bedroom apartment.
Right.
But we'll figure it out.
What I'm amazed, Jim, by the way, Jim Gaffigan's with us. Dad is Fat is his book. He's going to be signing it at the Barnes & Noble in Carmel, noon next Thursday. She had all of the kids there in the apartment, all 5 of them, right?
Yes.
That's astounding.
Yeah, well, she is Wonder Woman. And, I joke around that, I sometimes imagine that we had home births. People react like we just did it to upset them, because usually when people find out we had a home birth, they usually have the response of, we were going to do that, but we wanted our baby to live. It's, or that there was some laziness involved. People were like, you didn't want to go to the hospital? Well, it was far away, and I didn't feel like putting on pants. We had the babies at home.
A lot of this is about parenting, and some of it is about, I don't know if this is comparison you make between the way you're raising your kids and how your father raised you. I was very interested in the chapter about your dad. And, of course, parenting, well, okay, let's change that. Being a dad in his generation, and this was probably true of my dad, certainly true of his dad, it was a lot different back then, as you explain, than it is with you and I now.
Yeah, I have this whole essay where I talk about, look, I loved my father, and he did the best job he could, but the expectations of what a father should do and how that father should participate has changed dramatically, generation to generation. During my father's generation, he was, fathers were supposed to bring home the bacon, and by that, it's not that they would actually bring home the bacon or even shop for the bacon or cook the bacon. They would eat the bacon, which is understandable. It's not that, my dad or his generation didn't do that much. I'm amazed that they didn't feel guilty at all. I strive to be an involved dad, but I'm still, I have a summer baby sling and a winter baby sling, yet I'm still racked with guilt. It's like my dad didn't feel guilty at all. He'd be like, all right, I worked all week, I'm going to go and play golf. But there wasn't the society standard was that he was doing a great job.
Man, could you imagine if the standards for being a dad now were around back then, and what the reaction would have been to it from your dad, from my dad, from a whole lot of dads?
Yeah, the amount of diapers that I've changed.
Yeah,
and the amount of just my wife believes and I believe in attachment parenting. So I'm my kids, which explains why our kids end up in our bed, and we essentially lie down with them and cuddle them and eventually beg them to sleep.
Yeah.
But, so we, there's been this pretty dramatic shift.
Jim Gaffigan is with us. Dad is Fat is the book. He's signing it next Thursday, noon, at the Barnes & Noble in Carmel. A couple of observations I wanted to touch on. Your interpretation of children's books, and I think we all go through this because we read the same dadgum books day after day after day, and you start to wonder what went in them. Well, let's just start with Very Hungry Caterpillar. My kids still love Very Hungry Caterpillar, and they're really too old for it now.
Yeah, well, my whole thing is obviously that caterpillar had an eating disorder, and was probably masking some feelings, and I completely identify, that there's a little bit of hungry caterpillar in all of us, particularly in my eating habits.
Dr. Seuss, I love Dr. Seuss with all my heart, the late Dr. Seuss, but you're right, everything that you read from Dr. Seuss makes you sound like you're snockered.
Yeah, there's something amazing about Dr. Seuss, and is a cadence of it where it just is not it's not something that how normally people would speak. It's just very kind of strange.
Yeah,
and you do sound a little drunk.
But the drawings that he came up with, some of the things that were going on in his head when he came up with some of those characters and just the way he drew things. And then it was funny the other day, it's completely off topic. Actually, it was yesterday. I was doing some World War II research for D-Day and saw he did some editorial cartoons during the war for a newspaper in New York. It was an old newspaper called PM. And to see Dr. Seuss characters parodying the Nazis or parodying something that was going on in the country, that was kind of a bizarre thing. But that's what he did for 2 or 3 years during the war. That's amazing. Like, you just don't have this image. And, it's an amazing story. There's a book about his life, but, it's just amazing to think that Dr. Seuss was, that he was a human creature. Because, you read this and you're like, if someone said, an alien dropped these books off, and this is their interpretation of humans, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. That's right. What I don't like is, speaking of back to children's books, we went to see Mo Willems, the children's author. Great guy, wonderful author. We went to see went to a book signing, and he read a story to the kids. And I try to be expressive when I read to my kids, but I am way down here when it comes to expression, and Mo Willems is topping the ceiling when he's reading one of his Elephant and Piggy books to the kids. So once they see Mo Willems read like that, how am I expected to read from every time after that? I got to be just like Mo Willems, even if it takes me half an hour to get through, a 50-page book or whatever.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love your take on bars and daycare centers, because they're essentially the same thing when you think about it, aren't they?
Well, one of my premises is that I believe that toddlerhood is the peak of human existence. It's really all, I say that, when my kids are toddlers, I kind of turn to them and I say, enjoy it, because it's all downhill from there. Because I think that secretly, unconsciously, we are attempting to recreate our life as a toddler, which is why we go to bars. Mm-hmm. If you've been to a bar at 2 a.m., to pick up a friend, there's really no difference between a bar at 2 a.m. and, picking up a kid from daycare or nursery school. It's, they're screaming in both places for no reason at all.
Yep.
If you go in the bathroom, it's obvious not everyone's potty trained. And, there's usually someone crying in both places, about their best friend. And occasionally there's just a fight for no reason. It's like he was standing where I wanted to stand.
I'm guessing there are more potty accidents at bars than there were at my 4-year-old's preschool this past year.
Yeah. I mean, it's truly, an amazing experience when you can view the bar experience from, you turn the lights off in a daycare and, daycare, I keep saying daycare. You turn the lights off in a nursery school, and there's going to be screaming like, it's Saturday night in the club.
Speaking of Saturday night in the club, I have to ask you about the picture that's on page 230 of the book. Not that you got the book in front of you necessarily, but it's your kids around a table, dressed to the nines, with adult beverages, cards in front of him, even the little baby. I don't know what kind of hand he's holding there. The oldest boy has the cigar in his mouth. I love that picture, by the way. But
that was our Christmas card last year. We've done different. That was, I think it was Merry Christmas from the Gaffigan Brat Pack. And the year before, we had done a Christmas card, which was, we recreated the nativity scene. We only had 4 kids at that point. Mm-hmm. And our newborn was baby Jesus, and our daughter Mari was Mary, and our son Jack was Joseph, and then our now 4-year-old was Gabriel, the angel. So it was kind of funny, and it was taken by our parish priest, so it was all okayed by
so the Lord is okay with it then, yeah. Okay, Jim, and that picture is in the book also. Dad is Fat is the book. Jim Gaffigan is with us. Going to be at the Barnes & Noble in Carmel next Thursday at noon. Very quickly, with all the stories that you tell about parenting, and I mean, yes, you joke about it, but we always joke about parenting, but we do it because we love our families and we love our kids. And at the end of the book, you express what a lot of us are going to be feeling eventually, is one day we're going to look back on all the stuff that we went through, and we're going to wish we were going through it again. We're going to miss it.
Yeah, it's. I think it's probably the largest cliche of parenting. Like, there's just these cliches that are used to describe parenting that when you don't have kids, they don't make sense. They just sound like these saccharine terms. And even as a parent of a young child, you'll hear from other parents, you're going to miss this. And, it's really a generous thing to say to a parent of a young kid, to keep a perspective of, these are in some ways the good old days that you're existing. And there is something, of course, ironic about it, because are you really going to miss not being able to get a sleep-filled night? Are you going to really miss a kid wiping their chocolate hands on your only white shirt? Or are you going to miss, having to carry a kid that, somehow gained 10 pounds in one day to a bed? But I don't know, there's something, I tried to sew it up in the end in the book, and, I don't know. It's weird because you want to have a perspective on the whole thing, but I also think you got to laugh about it.
Yeah.
I think that parents that complain about parenting, that means that they're involved. If you're not complaining about getting up to go to a birthday party at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, who's having birthday parties at 8 a.m. on a Saturday? Like the Taliban? You know what I mean? It's like, it's just a strange thing. But, I think there's a certain kind of gallows humor because, parenting is such an enormous task, and it's an impossible task that we have to laugh about it, because it's not going to work out perfectly, no matter how hard we try. So we have to kind of laugh about it.
Laugh About It with Jim Gaffigan. The book is Dad is Fat. Great book. And you can see Jim, get your book signed at the Barnes & Noble, Highway 31 North in Carmel, Thursday at noon. And Jim, can't wait to have you in town. Really love the book and appreciate you spending some time with us.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.